record this. Tell people who didn't show up that if they want to watch this, all I want to do is I want to offer you one more FRQ as a practice. I'm hoping that most of you will actually take 45 minutes to write and respond to something, send it to me, and I'll be able to get together with you over the next few days individually with a scored essay. I've also got some scored samples for this one, although it's scored under the old rubric. And then I will probably post a bunch of, another handful of FRQs for you guys, question twos, just to kind of review over the weekend or Monday, Tuesday. I'm not sure what your schedule is with other APs. And then we can get together for just a little last minute session to get ourselves pumped up next Tuesday. First off, how many of you, raise your hand, how many of you have already taken an AP and had no issues with it? So most of you, yeah. I'm hearing that Calc, I think Gov, had some interesting things going on. I also heard that the Gov questions were all different. How did you guys know that? Whoops.
Because we
talk to each other.
So we were just texting about it.
Mrs. Louder said, the first thing she says was, oh my God, they're not supposed to talk about the test. But obviously you guys did. So this means you may get a range of questions. Danica might be responding to something different than Nick, something different than who's 120677. Is that you, Christian? Christian?
It might be. I don't know why my phone number is in there.
Oh, okay. Well, that's it.
That's the code. That's weird.
Yeah, no, that's the password. You're right. Okay. Anyway, doesn't matter. So real quick, here's what I want to do. I want to take about 10 minutes, walk you through this last minute prep sheet. That I want to look at this last FRQ. If you guys can do it today, that's great. If you're working on your speeches, you want to do it tonight or tomorrow, that's fine. Again, anybody who sends me something, I'll be happy to score it and then get together with you for 10 minutes and go over it with just some kind of last minute critiques. But I've posted this along with the FRQ. Actually, before we do this, let me not do this. Hang on. Let me go to, can you guys all see that, our sheet? So here's the FRQ. We'll look at it in a second. This is I don't know if you guys got this, but this link here is to a sheet, and it's for troubleshooting. Apparently, you guys, if you haven't already, or if you haven't taken AP yet, or you're taking one later this week, I guess you need to check your browsers, make sure you have all your browser updates done so that it doesn't interfere with something. People, and I don't think Samantha or Gregor are on right now. Well, Samantha, you are. There's Samantha. Those of you who are looking to upload pictures, well, let me stop sharing. Samantha, did you do pictures for Gov?
I didn't. I did copy and paste for Gov.
Okay. I did pictures for Calc, and you need to change some phone settings around so that it'll work properly.
Right, and that's on the sheet that's linked on our Schoology page. Apparently, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, it's an HEIS format.
It's an HEIC format normally. You need to change that to JPEG.
Right.
Charlotte can direct you to how to do that.
And also for Calc, you're probably just taking one picture of one sheet, right?
No, they were long questions. It was like.
Okay. And were you able, Josh, to combine those all into one document?
No, I did not. You attach a photo and then you attach the next one. You have to do it in sequence, but you do it one by one, which is kind of irritating because the photos aren't named properly. Obviously, they're just random image 255 1 or whatever.
Okay.
But you should check them afterwards because it'll show you the order that they're in, and you can verify that against the general thing.
You can also rename the images.
Yeah, so what I did is I took a picture of each sheet, I emailed them to myself, and then, because my email and my phone can work pretty quickly together for me personally, I dragged it to my desktop, renamed it, and then did that individually for each one, and then uploaded them in order. And so after I renamed it, I'm like, question 1, page 1 kind of deal.
Okay. And
Yeah,
you
what also
go ahead.
works is if you upload it from, like, you can rename it on your phone, upload it to your Google Drive, so it'll convert into a JPEG, and then you can just download it directly to your computer and easily upload it into the test.
I was doing AirDrop, and that was pretty quick as well.
Okay. Good to know. You guys, AP Lang is going to be a breeze because even if most of you will be typing your responses, and even if you're handwriting them, like I think Gregor and Samantha are considering, it's only one question that you don't have to submit the one time. It's not 2 questions, so that should make it easier. But anyway, so that link, and it's just 1-page document that talks about, if you haven't taken an AP yet, it talks about checking your browser to make sure you've got all of your updates, whatever to your browser. And it's just got a couple of, a couple of hints, a couple of tips about what Josh and Kendall and Jesse were just talking about in terms of, converting files and that kind of stuff. It's frankly beyond me. I'm impressed that you guys are going to figure out how to do it. So that link is on there. Let me go ahead and, so this is a document that I thought, if it's helpful, see that? This is also posted on the Schoology page. My thought, of course, was that you can ignore it now. You could read this before you do the next FRQ and see if this, provides any, if it's helpful, if it's any guidance. My thought was that if this is helpful as a document, you guys could print it out before the exam and just have it sitting there next to your keyboard as kind of a cheat sheet. I was going to do a bunch of stuff. I had a bunch of things from the College Board, but you guys, you guys are figuring this out. You're better at it than I am. Just again, put your initials at the top of each page, your Apple ID beneath your initials, number your pages. Single spaced is fine. I always ask you guys to double space your FRQs for me because it makes it a lot easier to read and respond to those. I got space to write in between the lines. But for the purposes of the exam, nobody's gonna be, commenting or marking up those papers. So if you want to single space, that's fine. So taking an exam, I'm just gonna read through this. I know you guys can read. I'm just gonna read, and if you guys have any, questions, stop me and ask. But so taking the exam. So assume you've got all the tech stuff ready. You're good to go at noon next Wednesday. As you take 2 or 3 minutes to read the prompt, and that's the, hang on, here's Thomas. That's the paragraph, just before the actual passage, which is going to give you a lot of clues to the rhetorical situation. Think in terms of rhetorical situation. Be sure to read the passage with this rhetorical situation in mind. Again, it's a speaker or writer. If it's today's is another memoir thing. The purpose, the audience. Keep these questions in mind. These are basic. You can expand on them for yourself. But what's the relationship between the speaker, writer, and the audience? What advantages or obstacles does this relationship pose? What's the purpose or goal? What action or attitude is the speaker, writer about promoting? What's the audience's attitude toward that goal? Are they hostile toward it? Are they favorable toward it? And again, how does the context of the argument affect the speaker writer's attempts to persuade his or her audience? I've got this example. Imagine a scientist concerned about global warming and sponsored by the National Resource Defense Fund, which is a powerful environmental lobby, is one, giving a speech to members of Greenpeace about the need to reduce carbon emissions. Obviously, that's a generally favorable audience. The audience is already on your side. 2, maybe they're delivering an editorial on a Fox News show. Or 3, maybe they're writing an open letter to her son who has just taken a job in the natural gas industry. So as you're thinking, and these are the things you're going to get from the prompt, the short paragraph before the actual passage. So you want to think how in each case would the rhetorical situation influence the way in which the scientist attempted to persuade that particular audience. So your opening paragraph, and you get most of this from the prompt, should be no more than 2 or 3 sentences. Some of you guys have been having like nice 3, 4, 5, very elegant, very interesting openings that kind of address the general issue of climate change and, in this case, in global, carbon emissions, you don't have a whole lot of room for that. So after no more than 2 or 3 sentences addressing the larger issue, end with a thesis statement. This is going to argue what are, list at least 1 or 2 of the features that the speaker or writer is using to persuade his or her audience that combines both the rhetorical situation and the goal. Here's some kind of just out of my ass examples. In that first one, so she's speaking to Green's piece. Your last sentence, your thesis sentence, and again, I want you to try to combine the rhetorical situation with the actual statement about how she's persuading her audience to adopt a particular goal. Knowing that her audience, she and her audience share a common set of values, the speaker draws on specific anecdotes to both celebrate individual achievements and remind the crowd of the urgency in their continued efforts to reduce carbon emissions. That's going to be different if the rhetorical triangle, if the audience is, unknown Fox News viewers. So number 2 would be understanding that many Fox viewers may be suspicious of her claims. The speaker walks her audience through a very detailed but accessible review of the data that supports the urgent need for reduction in carbon emissions. So again, trying to both state the goal, mention a couple of things that the speaker is doing to achieve that goal in the context of the larger rhetorical situation. Or drawing on their time. This is for a mother, the scientist is writing to her son. Drawing on their time together camping and biking in nature during her son's youth, the writer crafts a letter that makes evident both her continued love for his son while at the same time suggesting how a failure to reduce carbon emissions might one day prevent him from enjoying the same sort of experiences with his children. Admittedly kind of BS, but hopefully you get the point. Any questions on this part, the opening paragraph? If there are, just unmute yourself and chime in. And then you can write as many body paragraphs as you can. Some of you can write 2 body paragraphs. Some might write 1 long one. Some might write 3. It doesn't really matter. It's a function of how fast you can write, how quickly you can come up with ideas. But I want you, all of your body paragraphs, whether it's 1 or 3, to follow, use the following pattern. You're going to make an observation about tone, diction, examples, types of appeals, etc. After you make an observation, another way in which the writer attempts to persuade her, potentially hostile audiences through a litany of recent statistics about global climate change, period, or something like that. And then you reach into the text for direct evidence. These are the quotations. Again, there'd be short words and phrases that you kind of pepper in the paragraph. And then, this is key, tell your reader why the language you just cited supports your observation you make at the outset about how this is, how this works in the speaker or writer persuading his or her audience. This is the analysis, and you should try to milk it for 2 or 3 sentences before moving on to a new observation. Again, always try to relate your analysis of the specific strategies to the larger rhetorical situation, hostile Fox News audience, friendly Greenpeace audience, whatever. Do not reproduce long quotations. We've talked about this. Rather summarize, paraphrase, and only cite directly the most salient or important bits of language. For example, it's not bad but not great. This was the Charlotte Booth Luce one. Luce then cautions members of her audience that rationing is going to require sacrifice. She says we're going to have colder homes, different foods, less clothing. We're going to accept the challenges imposed by these conditions. She then goes on to say, and so that's where you got a long quotation. You let the quotation speak for itself. You don't spend any time talking about why what you just quoted supports the observation you make at the outset. Better, although not perfect, is Luce presents the challenges imposed by rationing by referencing specifically domestic concerns that she knows will resonate with her all-woman audience. She acknowledges that they will face colder homes, different food, and less clothing, but at the same time celebrates the strengths of their gender by reminding them that, being women, they know what will happen if they don't keep their homes and jobs functioning smoothly. So summarize, paraphrase, and just quote little bits. Questions about that? So these would be your body paragraphs. Hopefully, again, developing 2 or 3 good points, or observations is better than listing 6 or 7 without development. And then a lot of you have been saying, I don't know how to conclude these things. You're basically going to write until you've got about, 3 or 4 minutes left in that 45 minutes, because you're going to need the 5 minutes to, well, I'd actually like to hear about how long it actually took you guys to upload these things. But ostensibly, you've got the 45 minutes to write, not 40, and 5 minutes to upload your document. So you're you're watching the clock, you've got your timer there, you got the timer on the computer, whatever. And I guess it starts at noon. So at 12:42 or so, you're going to conclude by bringing yourself in. And this is going to be short. This is where you get to weigh in on the speaker writer's goal. Yes, the first person pronoun I is appropriate here at the end. For instance, in the initial example about carbon reduction, you might conclude by writing, this is where you can step away. The bulk of your responses have to be focused on rhetorical analysis. In other words, you're subordinating your views to an analysis of what's being done by another writer and his or her views. But in the end, you can come out and say, well, I admire Ms. Smith's attempts to find common ground with a potentially hostile audience. I guess she was doing an editorial of Fox. She's likely to encounter on Fox News. And while I believe her efforts would be largely successful, as someone who views climate change as the greatest challenge my generation faces, I'm concerned that we don't overly accommodate those who simply deny scientific facts. The need for carbon reduction is urgent, so too should be our approach to it. Anyway, 2 sentences, maybe 3 sentences, where Josh or Samantha or Jesse comes in and offers their take on the big issue. And then finally, I had a whole list, and I don't want you guys feeling overwhelmed. Anybody who wants to go back, look on the Schoology, look at those, rhetorical devices, look at those strategies for, techniques for argumentative writing about different claims and appeals and stuff. Feel free to do that, but it's not really necessary. So I didn't want to kind of overwhelm you. These are the ones that are most commonly referenced in these kinds of responses. Logos is obviously an appeal to logical reasoning. It's the rational argument, which of course would work with those Fox News audience. Pathos is an appeal to the emotions of the audience, trying to tug at their heartstrings. So logos is the head, pathos is the heart, and ethos is an appeal to the good character, knowledge, authority, or experience of the speaker. In other words, because Dr. Anthony Fauci has worked in infectious diseases for over 30 years, he has a lot of knowledge, he has a lot of authority. That's an ethical appeal. Or it can be an appeal to someone that the writer or speaker references who is an authority and has a lot of experience with this issue. Fallacy is simply an instance of faulty logic, drawing a conclusion that's not justified by the evidence. Again, you can review that handout if you want. And then these, of all the rhetorical strategies, these are the ones you're most likely to encounter. And again, you don't have to remember these words. You can talk just about repetition. You don't have to talk about anaphora or epistrophe, but they're on there. Hyperbole, this is exaggeration for effect. Antithesis is where you put two opposite things together. On the one hand, on the other hand, that sort of thing. And of course, alliteration, but you can't talk about any of these. You can't say there's repetition or anaphora or epistrophe without talking about how that advances the writer or speaker's efforts in achieving his or her goal. And then finally, just keep in mind that rhetoric, we talk, ooh, don't be freaked out by rhetoric, rhetorical situation or rhetorical analysis. Rhetoric is simply the art of persuasion. Rhetorical analysis then is simply an explanation of how a speaker or writer persuades a particular audience. Have fun with this exam. This will be your easiest exam of all the ones you take, with the exception maybe of psych. No, I'm just kidding. Don't tell Ms. Pignola. But have fun. Write with flair. Relax. Again, an essay that you genuinely kind of enjoy writing is something the reader's going to genuinely enjoy reading, and let the readers hear your unique voice. Danica, in response to who was the lab girl, the prologue we wrote, she was talking about how the director addressed to the reader, and she said, I can't remember the woman's name, Lahan or whatever, said, tells the reader to look out the window, and in parentheses, Danica said, I did. And that kind of eruption of personality, of individuality is really nice. So don't hesitate to have a little fun, push the boundaries, that kind of stuff. Any questions so far? No? Kat, I didn't see you come in. Hey, how's it going? All righty. Ellen
I've
is
been here
here.
the whole time.
Really?
Yeah.
Sorry. My computer, living in this tent, my computer somehow has gotten filthy, and my screen is really difficult to see. Plus, I'm pretty much blind. So anyway, here is, whoops. Here's the last FRQ. Again, on Friday, I'm going to give you, and this is posted on the Schoology page. On Friday, I'll just upload to Schoology probably another 4 or 5 FRQs for you guys just to review. If you want to get together and chat about them, you don't necessarily have to write anything in response to them. It's just kind of the thinking exercise. So Monday, Tuesday, as the exam gets near, you guys can think about what you might say about these particular pieces. So far we've seen letters, very popular with the College Board. We've seen speeches, which is what I hope we get. And again, I understand you guys apparently might get different prompts, which would be interesting. And then we've got, okay, letters, speeches, I'm forgetting one. Then we've got kind of the sort of editorial board one or the prologue one, which is writing about, an issue like the importance of biology. And then the fourth kind that historically the College Board likes are the sort of travelogue ones. This one actually comes from a memoir. And they're kind of difficult because the argument, usually they're descriptive of a place. And they've done this about the Mississippi River, about, Florida, the Florida Keys. I'll include that one. This one's actually about North Dakota. And so if you get a piece that's just kind of like a travelogue piece that's describing a particular place, the argument then becomes you're going to assume that the audience is somebody who hasn't been there. If the description is a place like Hawaii or Bali or something that seems really appealing, then oops, sorry, let me get Sydney in. It's really appealing, then you've got a favorable audience. If it's a place like North Dakota, then you might realize that most readers, in this case, because it's not a speech, most readers might think, God, I never want to go to North Dakota. And so the argument then, or the purpose then becomes trying to convince the reader that a place, like in this case, the upper Midwest, is actually a nice place, and an interesting place, and worthy of attention, maybe a visit. So the passage below is from The Horizontal World, which I think is a great title. Deborah Marquardt's 2006 memoir about growing up in North Dakota. Read the passage carefully, then a well-written essay analyzes strategies, this is rhetorical analysis, Marquardt uses to characterize the upper Midwest. So obviously, the first thing we have to do as we're reading is think, what is her characterization? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it indifferent? Is it ambivalent? I got to figure that out as I read the passage. And the argument becomes she's trying to convince the reader or the audience to adopt the same characterization of the Midwest, which is a little more subtle than trying to, encourage African Americans to try to enlist in the Union Army or get the Lord Viceroy of India to repeal the salt tax. These are much, much more specific things. So this is a fun passage. I actually like this passage. I will post tomorrow afternoon. I'll post some 3 scored examples of a strong essay, a kind of medium essay, and a weak essay that you can look at. This is not a requirement. This is practice. This is for your guys' benefit. I'd love to see you do well on this AP exam. So those of you who want to take 45 minutes over the next couple of days, today or tomorrow, maybe even Friday, and send me something, I will go ahead and score it, send it back to you, and find a time. Yeah, it's really windy. Find a time when we can get together and go over your response. So, hey, Sydney. That's about it. Now, Sydney, tell other people who didn't show up that I actually recorded this. So it takes a while to upload, but I'll go ahead and link this to our Schoology page for people who, for whatever reason, weren't able to attend. I'm going to stop recording now.